Hi, this is Laura Holyoke, and I have a PowerPoint here for you going over your program evaluation plan assignment. With 25% of your grade, excuse me. So using your selected program that you use for your program plan, you're going to develop an evaluation plan, which will consist of the following: to design evaluation questions, and then for each question, identifying specific aspects of it. So in your evaluation questions, what I would like for you to do is to ask 2 process or implementation questions, 2 outcome questions, and 2 impact questions. For each one of the questions, to identify the method of measurement you will use, the data sources, indicators, benchmarks, and then a target for success. So I'm going to go over each one of these. Your questions, the process and implementation questions, usually come from your activities and outputs column in your logic model. So these answer to what extent is a program being implemented as intended. So how well is our program being implemented? And these also help you answer how can it be improved. Outcome questions are usually short-term outcomes and medium-term outcomes. These speak to the effectiveness of a program. To what extent are the participants achieving desired outcomes? And then to what extent have participants in the program improved whatever it is that the program is supposed to improve in them? Impact questions focus on the long term. Sometimes these speak directly to the program goals and mission. To what magnitude are our efforts affecting change in the population? So overall population, which the program was initially documented. And what effects of the program are being passed on to please make sure that you choose your questions that logically relate and are influenced by the program, that they're meaningful to you, but also can be persuasive, to your funders. So don't just go with kind of surface level questions, but really think to yourself, what would somebody want to know about this program if they're giving me $500,000 every 2 years? Here again is looking at the logic model and some questions or what relates to questions that you can use, or to, not really use, not really exactly use them, but you can certainly, what's the word that I'm looking for? Adapt them to your program evaluation plan. So for each question, I ask that you identify the method of measurement. So how are you going to collect data? Your data sources, so where is the origin of that data? Indicators and benchmarks, how will you know that your program is performing? And then target for success. What is it that you are shooting for in your program? Methods of measurement, here's a list of different ways that data can be collected. They can be collected through surveys, interviews, observations. It may be a group technique, case study, maybe pre-post tests, could be testimonials. So what you need to do is look at the outcome or the output, and how are you going to measure that? How will you collect data? And then identify the origin of your data, which are your data sources. It's always good to collect or obtain information from more than one source. So oftentimes these come from existing information that's out there. People and participants, people that both work as staff as well as participants, who the target market is for the program. And then documentation and observations within the program. People in the program, maybe logged hours that you have participants sign in or turn in something. So indicators and benchmarks. Answer, how will we know? Indicators tell us what the outcome looks like when it occurs. So we would usually state these before we do an evaluation, and usually as the program plan is being written. What does success look like? It describes a change that is occurring in our participants, and they relate directly to the outcomes that are being evaluated. Whereas benchmarks set an informal standard that we seek to meet some sort of requirement. Usually we identify initial options and need for improvement. So we say we want to hit a benchmark of 75% of the people. So this gives us benchmarks from year to year. When we perform evaluations, the data helps tell us whether we're doing better or what worse looks like. It's just a benchmark. So I just wanted to point out to you in different tables where information is and what it looks like. So we have an evaluation question here. Did the participants learn whatever? What information is required? Sources of information, in this case, would be participants, and we're going to collect data via a survey. Here's another table that looks at inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts. What are different indicators for each one of these? Well, outputs, it's the tangible products and services that the activity, aka program, delivers. Outcomes are the intended changes. These are knowledge, skills, aspirations, behavior that the activity aims to achieve. And then impacts are long-term. Remember, the expected benefits for the beneficiaries, the participants. And then means of verification, where, how do we collect the data, and where does the data originate? Targets for success. So what are we shooting for? Performance targets may mean, you can see this whole list, a minimum of 5 streams with 10 participants in each stream, 80% of something, 60% of participants develop a vocational pathway in the music industry. So these are, again, what we're shooting for. Outputs tend to have straightforward indicators. Measure outcomes and show what change has occurred. So if the outcome question is to what extent has the community become more aware of watershed issues, you can see that there are several sample indicators listed. Attendance at relevant public meetings, annual participation rates in Lake Cleanup Day, number of people who can name threats to lake water quality in resident survey. So notice that they didn't just go with one indicator or one data collection method in this case, or one data source, but they're pulling from several different data sources. Same with the second evaluation question. To what extent are participants behaving in more environmentally responsible ways toward the watershed? Per capita water use rates from water company, percent of lakeshore homes with buffers to prevent erosion. So you can see that there are, again, several sample indicators, which also means several data sources. Here's a fuller table that has several of the items listed here, what the indicator is, so the what indicators can be, what the targets are. So if the indicator is percent of practices that implemented one or more recommendations by the proposed date. We're looking for 50% of non-critical recommendations being implemented by the proposed date. Where are we going to find this information? Who and where or what are our data sources? And then how are we going to collect that data? What's the method by which we'll do that? Some more examples of indicators. So if we're looking at the type of measure above, for each input, process, outputs, and outcomes, you can see different kinds of indicators: staff hours, expenditures, process type of measures, can be records, treatment plans, waiting times. So the indicators can be all sorts of different things. I think a lot of times people get stuck in the mode of people signing in for amount of time or just people that show up. So think to yourself, what are other indicators in the program? Another example, if we have a targeted outcome that high school visitors will increase their interest in the moon, our evaluation question, to what extent does the exhibit change high school students' interest in the moon? Well, we have a couple of indicators. One is during a visit that the high school students will engage their parents in conversation. And the second one, high school students visiting the museum will indicate that the exhibit increased their interest in learning more about the moon and or a related topic. How are we going to collect that data? We're going to observe. We're going to conduct interviews. And then you don't really need to worry about the timeline, but just again, another example for you to go by. So create a logic model. Remember that all these should tie right back to your logic model. You can see where your questions of implementing, output, outcome, impact come from. So they should go right back into your logic model. So remember to check that as you go through each one of these. Thank you so much.